Paris, a city bathed in golden lights, known for its romance, its passion, and tonight, its tragedy. A crime scene unfolds under the dim glow of the street lamps. The air is thick with tension. Police officers move swiftly, their radios crackling with urgent voices. The front doors of an elegant home are flung open, revealing the chaos within. A man lies motionless on the polished floor, his once vibrant life now drained away. His chest, still, his eyes unseeing. A pool of crimson spreads beneath him, staining the pristine white marble. And standing just feet away, frozen in place, is a woman. Her hands are shaking, her breath uneven. Her wrists, bound in cold steel, reflect the flashing lights that pour in from the street. She does not fight. She does not resist. She only stares at the body of the man she once loved. This was not how their story was supposed to end. For years, Sophia and Daniel had been the picture of love, partners in life, in dreams, in the promises they made to one another. To the outside world, they were a perfect couple. Smiling in photographs, locked in loving embraces, their laughter once echoing through the very walls that now stood witness to murder. But beneath the surface, beneath the warmth and the whispered "I love yous," was a secret, one so carefully hidden, so meticulously maintained, that it had remained undiscovered for years. A deception so deep, so calculated, that when it finally unraveled, it left nothing but destruction in its wake. A husband living two lives. Two women. Two families. A web of lies so tangled that, once pulled apart, there was no escape. What drives a person to such deception? And what happens when the truth is finally revealed? Tonight, we piece together the final moments of Daniel's life, the lies, the betrayal, and the moment it all came crashing down. Was this an act of passion? A woman pushed beyond her breaking point? Or was there something more, something colder, something calculated? Stay with us as we dive into a story of love, betrayal, and the deadly consequences of secrets left too long in the dark. Sophia and Daniel's story began the way all great love stories do, with a spark. A chance meeting in a quaint cafe on the streets of Lyon, where the air smelled of fresh espresso and warm pastries. Sophia, a freelance writer, was seated in the corner, buried in her notebook, when Daniel approached with a confident yet easygoing charm. He was magnetic, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. Their conversation was effortless, filled with laughter and stolen glances. What started as a brief encounter turned into long evening walks along the Rhône, whispered conversations beneath the glow of streetlights, and the kind of deep connection that made the world feel smaller when they were together. Within a year, they were inseparable. Daniel, an ambitious entrepreneur, spoke of dreams, of traveling the world, of building a future together. Sophia, captivated by his vision and the security he seemed to offer, allowed herself to believe in forever. Their wedding was something out of a storybook. A private ceremony in Provence, surrounded by endless lavender fields and the soft hum of a violin. Daniel, dressed in an elegant charcoal suit, looked at Sophia as if she were the only woman in the world. And she, in that moment, had no reason to doubt that she was. For 7 years, their life together unfolded like a beautifully scripted film. Romantic anniversaries in Italy, lazy Sunday mornings wrapped in each other's arms, spontaneous getaways to hidden European gems. But what no one saw, what even Sophia failed to recognize, was that beneath the surface, Daniel was a man divided. Hindsight has a cruel way of revealing the truth. Looking back, Sophia would later wonder how she had missed the signs. They were subtle at first, so small, so easily dismissed. Daniel's work demanded frequent travel. He was a consultant, a businessman with a growing list of international clients. Paris, Madrid, Amsterdam, his calendar was filled with meetings and networking events. Sophia, trusting and independent, never questioned it. In fact, she admired his ambition, his dedication. But then, there were the moments that didn't quite add up. The business trips that stretched longer than expected. The phone calls he would take in another room, his voice hushed. The messages that would pop up on his phone, names she didn't recognize, conversations that ended the moment she entered the room. There were excuses, always reasonable explanations. A sudden change in schedule. A last-minute client dinner. A missed call from an old friend. Sophia, wrapped in the comfort of their life together, pushed aside any nagging doubts. She told herself that all marriages had secrets. That trust meant letting go of paranoia. That Daniel would never betray her. But the truth was, Daniel had already mastered the art of deception. Looking back, there were moments when she should have known. The night he came home smelling of a perfume that wasn't hers. He had laughed, kissed her on the forehead, and brushed it off as a co-worker's lingering scent from a hug. The way he always hesitated when she asked about his trips. How his stories, once so detailed and vivid, became vague and rushed. Then, there was the suitcase. One evening, while Daniel was away on business, Sophia had gone to retrieve something from their closet. She wasn't searching for answers, wasn't digging for secrets. But as she pulled his suitcase from the shelf, a small piece of paper fluttered to the ground. A receipt. A boutique in Paris. A purchase made just 2 weeks earlier. A delicate gold bracelet engraved with the words, Pour toujours, mon amour, forever, my love. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The bracelet wasn't hers. She sat there for what felt like hours, the receipt trembling in her hands. Her mind raced for explanations, but deep down, she knew. This wasn't a simple oversight. This wasn't a gift waiting to be given. This was evidence of another woman. And yet, when Daniel returned, she said nothing. Confrontation was a terrifying thing. To ask the question meant facing the answer, and Sophia wasn't ready for that. She told herself there had to be another explanation. That maybe, just maybe, she was overreacting. So she buried her suspicions beneath forced smiles and carefully crafted indifference. She told herself it was all in her head. Until Paris. Until the message. Until the moment she held his phone in her hands, reading the words that shattered everything. I miss you, mon amour. The children can't wait to see you. Not I love you. Not I miss our nights together. But the children. Daniel hadn't just been unfaithful. He had built an entire life without her. And now, she would destroy it. The fairytale had turned into a nightmare. The man she had devoted her life to had spent years perfecting his lies. And she, blinded by love, had believed every single one. The weight of betrayal was suffocating. The need for answers, unbearable. And so, she made a decision. She would follow him. She would watch as he lived the life he had stolen from her. She would uncover every last detail of his deception. What she didn't know was that her quest for the truth would end with blood on her hands. Daniel had been playing a dangerous game. And soon, he would pay the price. From the moment their plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport, something about Daniel felt off. At first, Sophia chalked it up to stress. He had always been particular about work, carrying the weight of his responsibilities wherever he went. But this was different. His energy was tense, restless, his gaze shifting, as if he were watching for something, or someone. Their first night in Paris was meant to be magical. A candlelit dinner at a charming bistro near the Seine, laughter shared over fine wine, and the warmth of the city embracing them. But as they sat across from each other, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel was elsewhere. He checked his phone constantly, his fingers drumming against the table. Each time the screen lit up, his expression darkened, his jaw tightening, his eyes darting to Sophia before quickly turning away. When she reached for his hand, he flinched. Just slightly. Just enough for her to notice. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't the man she had married. Something was wrong. Later that night, as the city rested beneath a blanket of twinkling lights, Sophia lay awake in their luxurious hotel suite. Daniel was in the bathroom, speaking in hushed tones. She strained to listen. His voice was lower than usual, urgent, almost pleading. Then, a quiet laugh. Not his usual deep, careless chuckle, the kind she had fallen in love with, but something softer, more intimate. The kind meant for someone you truly adore. A cold shiver ran down her spine. When he returned, he forced a smile, sliding his phone into his pocket. Work call, he murmured. Nothing important. Sophia said nothing. But she felt it. A crack in the foundation of their marriage. The next day, the suspicions grew heavier, suffocating. Every time Daniel's phone buzzed, he turned away, angling the screen out of sight. At one point, she caught him staring at it, lost in thought, his thumb hovering over the keyboard before he sighed and put it away. And then there was the moment at the cafe. They had stopped for an afternoon espresso near Montmartre. Sophia watched as Daniel's eyes flickered toward the entrance. A flicker of recognition, of panic. His body stiffened. When she turned to follow his gaze, the figure had already disappeared. Daniel, she asked, searching his face. He forced a casual sip of his coffee. Do you know someone here? He hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for her to catch the lie before it even left his lips. No. Just thought I saw an old friend. That night, as he slept beside her, Sophia made her choice. She had to know the truth. With trembling fingers, she reached for his phone. It was locked. But she knew Daniel. He was meticulous in many ways, but he always used something easy to remember, something personal. Her first attempt, their wedding anniversary. Incorrect. Her second, the year they met. No match. A deep breath. Then, she tried one more. The year he was born. The screen unlocked. And with that, her life as she knew it ended. Dozens of messages flooded the screen, but one thread stood out. Elise. The most recent message had been sent just hours earlier. I miss you, mon amour. The children can't wait to see you. Sophia's heart pounded against her ribs. Her vision blurred as she scrolled up, reading each message like a stab to the chest. I can't wait to be in your arms again. When will you tell her the truth? You belong with us, Daniel. With our family. Sophia felt the room closing in around her. She pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, gasping for breath. Daniel had a family. Not just an affair, not just some meaningless fling. A wife. A home. Children. And she had never known. Her hands moved on their own, searching for more proof, more evidence of the life he had been hiding. Bank statements. Flights booked under a different last name. Then, the final blow. An online search led her to the French marriage registry. There it was. Black and white? Undeniable. Daniel Dupont, married to Elise Martin. Date of marriage, 12 years ago. 12 years. Before Sophia. Before their vows. Before the life he had built with her. A strangled sob tore from her throat. This wasn't a betrayal. It was fraud. Her entire life with him had been a carefully constructed lie. Sophia sat there, numb, for what felt like hours. Images of their life together flashed through her mind, every anniversary, every promise, every whispered "I love you." Had he ever meant them? Had she ever really known him? Then, a single, terrifying thought took root in her mind. She had followed the rules. Been the perfect wife. Loyal. Loving. Trusting. And what had it given her? Nothing but a lie. No. This wasn't going to end like this. She wasn't going to be the woman who let a man deceive her and walk away unscathed. She needed to see it with her own eyes. She needed to watch him with them. She needed to face the truth, not just in messages and records, but in real life. And so, she made a decision. Tomorrow, she would follow him. Tomorrow, she would see the other life he had stolen from her. And after that? Not even she knew what she was capable of. The sun had set, casting a golden glow over the streets of Paris, but Sophia barely noticed. She sat in a rented car, parked a safe distance from the address she had found buried deep in Daniel's phone. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had followed him from their hotel, weaving through the streets, her heart hammering with every turn he took. A part of her still hoped that she was wrong, that there was some rational explanation for all of this. But when she saw him step out of his car, all hope died. Daniel walked up to the house like he belonged there. Like he lived there. A woman opened the door, Elise. And then, two small figures rushed toward him. Children. Their laughter filled the evening air as Daniel scooped them into his arms, pressing kisses to their cheeks. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She had always longed to see Daniel like this, a father, warm and affectionate. But these weren't her children. This wasn't her home. She was the outsider. Tears blurred her vision as she stepped out of the car, her body moving before her mind could catch up. Every step toward the house felt like walking through fire, her rage fueling her movements. And then she was at the door. And then she was inside. The moment Daniel turned and saw her standing there, his face drained of color. Sophia? His voice cracked, laced with disbelief, with terror. Elise took a step back, confused. Who is this? Sophia's voice trembled with fury. Tell her, Daniel. Tell her who I am. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. Elise's eyes darted between them, realization dawning. What's going on? Sophia's breath came fast, uneven. The room blurred as the betrayal consumed her. He's my husband, she spat, venom dripping from every syllable. The silence that followed was deafening. Elise's face contorted in horror. She turned to Daniel, shaking her head. No. That's not possible. Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for Elise, desperate to explain. Elise, please, I can. But before he could finish, Sophia's voice sliced through the air like a blade. You lied to both of us. Her entire body shook as the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Years of trust, of love, of devotion, reduced to nothing. You used me, she choked out, her hands balling into fists. You married me, knowing you already had a wife, a family. Elise took a sharp breath, staggering backward. Daniel, she whispered, her voice filled with betrayal. Is it true? He swallowed hard, guilt written all over his face. Elise, I never meant to hurt you. But Sophia didn't let him finish. You didn't mean to, she spat. Then what was it? A game? Were we just two pieces on your little chessboard? Daniel's desperation grew, his hands reaching out. Sophia, please, A bitter laugh escaped her lips, raw and hollow. Don't. Elise suddenly grabbed Daniel's arm, her own face twisted in fury. How long, Daniel? Her voice shook. How long have you been lying to me? Daniel's silence was the answer. The truth was laid bare. There was no more escaping it. No more excuses. The web of lies collapsed in an instant. But the nightmare was just beginning. Sophia's breath was ragged, her vision tunneling. She had never known rage like this, never felt something so primal, so all-consuming. The room seemed to close in around her, suffocating, drowning her in her own fury. Her eyes darted to the small table near the entrance. A glint of metal caught her attention. A knife? Ornate, decorative, just another piece of the home Daniel had built with Elise. A home that was never meant to include her. Her fingers wrapped around the handle before she even realized what she was doing. "Sophia, stop." Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. But it was too late. With a scream of unfiltered rage, she lunged forward. The knife plunged into his chest. Daniel gasped, his eyes widening in shock as he stumbled backward. His hands clutched at the wound, crimson spilling through his fingers. Elise screamed, a piercing, heart-wrenching sound. The children cried, their small voices filled with terror. Daniel's knees buckled. He collapsed onto the floor, his breath shallow, labored. His eyes locked onto Sophia's, filled with something she couldn't place: fear? Regret? Love? And then, he was still. The room was silent, save for Elise's sobs. Sophia's hands trembled, the blood warm against her skin. The man she had loved, the man who had betrayed her, was gone. And for the first time since uncovering the truth, she felt nothing at all. The silence in the room was suffocating. Daniel's lifeless body lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath him, the last remnants of his deception staining the home he had built on lies. Elise sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her children as they trembled in fear, their innocent minds unable to comprehend the horror they had just witnessed. And Sophia? Sophia stood frozen, the knife slipping from her fingers, clattering against the marble floor. Her breath was shallow, uneven, as she stared at what she had done. There was no going back. With shaking hands, Elise reached for her phone. Her voice, once filled with love for the man she had shared a life with, now carried only pain and fear. "Illinois ist mort, Montmarie ist mort, LLA Tuesday, he's dead, my husband is dead, she killed him." The call was brief, but its weight was immeasurable. The sound of sirens pierced the quiet night, growing louder with every second. Red and blue lights painted the walls in flashes, the once warm glow of the Parisian street now harsh and unforgiving. When the officers burst through the door, guns drawn, Sophia didn't move. She didn't fight. She didn't speak. She simply stood there, eyes blank, wrists limp as they pulled her arms behind her back, the cold metal of the handcuffs biting against her skin. The last thing she saw before being led out was Daniel's body, Elise cradling their children, whispering words of comfort that would never be enough. By morning, the world knew her name. A wife's revenge, betrayal ends in murder. Parisian tragedy, double life exposed in brutal killing. Love, lies, and death, the Sophia Laurent trial begins. News cameras swarmed the police station as Sophia was led inside, her face pale, void of emotion. Journalists fought for space, flashing cameras capturing every angle of the woman who had once been a devoted wife, now branded a murderer. The court of public opinion split in two. To some, she was a victim, a woman pushed to the edge by the ultimate betrayal. A loving wife who had been deceived, humiliated, and discarded, only to snap in a moment of blind rage. To others, she was a cold-blooded killer. She had followed Daniel. Investigated him. Found his family. Walked into that house. She knew what she was doing. The crime, they argued, was not an impulsive act of passion but one of premeditation. And the prosecution would use that narrative to their advantage. The courtroom was packed, reporters lining the back, their pens scratching furiously across notepads as the trial unfolded. Sophia sat motionless, clad in a simple black dress, her once vibrant eyes hollow. Across from her sat Elise, a grieving widow, her face etched with pain. The prosecution wasted no time painting Sophia as a calculated murderer. She did not stumble upon this affair by accident, the lead prosecutor declared, pacing before the jury. She searched for it. She followed him. She planned this confrontation. And when the moment came, she did not walk away. She picked up that knife, and she ended his life. Evidence was laid out, her internet searches, her tracking of Daniel's movements, the messages she had uncovered. The argument was clear, this was not a crime of passion. This was revenge. Sophia's attorney fought back, arguing that betrayal can push even the most rational minds to the brink. This was not premeditation, he countered. This was pain. Raw, uncontrollable pain. How many of us can say we would act rationally if we found out the person we loved had been living a lie? He turned to the jury, his voice steady. Sophia was not a monster. She was a wife. A woman who devoted herself to a man who never truly existed. And when that illusion shattered, she reacted as any heartbroken person might, tragically, impulsively. The emotional plea struck a chord with many, but it wasn't enough to erase the facts. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for, Elise took the stand. Her voice trembled as she relived that night, her words painting a chilling picture. "I saw the rage in her eyes," she whispered. "I saw the moment she decided to kill him. It wasn't just grief. It was hatred." Sophia, who had remained composed throughout the trial, finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I loved him. I loved him." But love was not a defense for murder. And the jury had made their decision. The courtroom fell silent as the judge's voice rang out. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." A sharp gasp echoed through the chamber. Sophia closed her eyes, her body sagging as the weight of the words crushed her. Life. She would spend the rest of her days inside a French prison, haunted by the choices she had made. Elise did not stay for the sentencing. She could not bear to remain in Paris, a city now tainted by betrayal and blood. Within weeks, she packed her belongings, gathered her children, and fled, searching for a place where the ghosts of her past could not follow. Sophia, meanwhile, faded into obscurity, her name becoming nothing more than a tragic tale whispered in hushed tones. Some would remember her as the scorned woman who snapped. Others, as a wife who loved too deeply and lost herself in the fire of her own heartbreak. But one truth remained undeniable. Paris, the city of love, had become the city where love was destroyed. The case divided the world. Some saw Sophia as a woman who had been pushed beyond her limits, a victim of betrayal who had reacted in the heat of passion. She was lied to, sympathizers argued. Her entire life was a deception. How could anyone stay rational after finding out that their husband had a secret family? Others, however, saw the act for what it was, murder. She had a choice, critics countered. Yes, she was hurt. Yes, she was angry. But she could have walked away. Instead, she let her rage consume her. The courtroom had rendered its verdict. The law had made its decision. But in the court of public opinion, the debate raged on. Was Sophia Laurent a victim of circumstance, or had she become the very monster she despised? Inside the confines of her prison cell, time became meaningless. Days blurred into nights, weeks into months. The reality of her sentence settled into her bones, heavier than the shackles that once bound her wrists. There were no more candlelit anniversary dinners. No weekend getaways. No whispered, "I love you"s in the early hours of the morning. Only silence. She would never again walk the streets of Paris, feel the warmth of the sun on her face as she sipped coffee at a cafe, or lose herself in the melody of a love song playing in the distance. The man she had killed was gone. And so was the woman she had once been. For Elise, Paris was no longer home. The city streets were filled with memories she could never erase. The laughter she had once shared with Daniel now felt like a cruel illusion, a dream that had turned into a nightmare. She packed her bags, took her children by the hand, and walked away from the city where her heart had been shattered. Where she went, no one knew. Some said she moved to the countryside, seeking a quiet life away from the whispers and judgment. Others believed she left France altogether, searching for a new beginning across the ocean. But wherever she went, one thing was certain, she was running from a past she could never truly escape. As the camera pans across the Parisian skyline, the beauty of the city remains untouched. The Eiffel Tower still stands tall. The Seine still flows, its waters reflecting the golden lights of the bridges above. To the outside world, Paris is still the city of love. But for those who knew the story of Daniel, Sophia, and Elise, it is also the city of betrayal. The city of heartbreak. The city of a love so twisted, it ended in bloodshed. In the city of love, love was destroyed. What do you think? Was Sophia justified in her rage, or did she take things too far? Was she a woman scorned, acting out of unbearable pain? Or was she simply another murderer, her actions no different from any other crime of passion? We may never know the true depth of what Sophia felt in those final moments before she took Daniel's life. But one thing is certain, love, when tainted by deception, can turn even the purest heart into something unrecognizable. If you found this story shocking, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories.